let's re-cork a clarinet. You will need something to remove the old cork with, calipers. They don't have to be digital like these. Any calipers will do. A straight edge ruler, a brand new razor blade, some sheet cork, just about any writing utensil, paraffin wax, smooth jaw pliers. The wider the better. Something like this duckbill model is great. However, if you don't have that, you could substitute. You would need two things to substitute. You would need a bench anvil and a rawhide mallet. We'll get to that in a minute. So I have two different cork removing tools. This one's from J.L. Smith. This one's from Allied Supply. I actually like the one from Allied Supply better. Almost anything that both of those companies make, I'll usually like the J.L. Smith version better. Not in this case, though. Allied Supply's cork scraper works really, really well. So that's the one I'm going to use. If you don't have this, you could use just an old razor blade or even an old screwdriver, whatever you can get in there to just get this old cork off. But this thing, especially if you're doing lots and lots of recorks, this thing will save you a ton of time. And you just want all the big pieces off of it. All right, doesn't got to be so clean you're going to eat off it or anything like that. Something like that is all good. So I do things a little bit differently than Melody does in the book. Feel free to use my way. Feel free to use her way. Feel free to use a combination of the two. So I think calipers make this way easier. I don't think she uses calipers at all. So I'm going to take my calipers, and with the inside measuring tool, I'm going to measure how wide we need our new cork to be. All right, so I'm just going to measure in the channel where the old cork came from. And then there's a little screw where you can lock that size in place. And so there we go. I need to make my new cork that wide. 9 times out of 10, I don't even turn on my digital calipers when I'm measuring something because I just care about what the distance is. I don't care about what the number is. And I could turn them on and see that that distance is 493.5 thousandth of an inch or 12.54 millimeters. I don't care though. All right, that's nice to know, but I really don't care. I care that it's that and that I have that distance locked in place. This is a plastic clarinet. Every plastic clarinet and oboe I have ever seen takes 3/64 of an inch thickness cork. Right? A wood clarinet might be different. It's still usually 3/64, but it might be 1/16. Sax necks will always take 1/16. I've never seen any sax neck that took something else. But any plastic clarinet or plastic oboe that I've ever seen is always going to be 3/64 of an inch thickness. I get this from J.L. Smith. I think they make the nicest cork. Typically in my home shop, I'm working on clarinets that are worth thousands and thousands of dollars, so I use the nicest cork I can find. This old Selmer clarinet is definitely an exception. It's not worth thousands and thousands of dollars, but yeah, it's what I've got in stock, so it's going to get the really nice cork. For a band room, I would recommend probably getting your cork from Music Medic, actually. It's still very good quality, but it is so much cheaper. And at Crane, that's what I stock, because it's still very good cork, but it's usually going on a Techniques instrument, so we don't need to spend, almost twice as much money on the J.L. Smith cork as the Music Medic cork. So I'm going to take that distance right there, and grab my pen, and I'm just going to mark how far from the edge of the cork that distance spans. Cork is not cheap no matter where you get it from. So I want to save as much cork as possible. I don't want to waste any if I don't have to. So there we go. So I've marked the top and at the bottom. You don't need to draw a line and connect them or anything because you're going to use your straight edge to connect them. And I don't want to screw up the cut again, because if this goes a little diagonal, I just wasted a chunk of cork. So that is why I always start with a brand new, extremely sharp razor blade for the cutting process here. Just need to move off my mat to do the cut here. And I am just connecting the dots with my straight edge. Leaning into the straight edge ever so slightly. And there we go. There's a nice cork. I think Melody says in the book that she tries not to go all the way through. I have no idea why she does that. Sometimes it won't go all the way through, and you might have like just scored it but not cut all the way through. No problem. You can just flex it and it'll pop right off clean if the cut didn't go all the way through. I don't know why she prefers to not go all the way through. I really don't even think about it. I just figure it usually does go all the way through, but if it doesn't, then I kind of do what she does in the book and kind of just rock it apart. All right, next. So, as you saw, this cork it's in a flat sheet, right? It doesn't want to be a circle like we're about to make it. So we need to kind of get this a little bit more loosey-goosey here. And the way I like to do that is everybody's favorite technique. This is called squeezing the pith out of the cork. No, I did not just make that up. This is actually what this is called, is squeezing the pith out of the cork. And I'm just going to go down with my duckbill pliers, just giving a little squeeze all the way, and that's going to make it much, much more pliable. So that's like taking out some insurance against crackage when we try to make this into a circle. If you didn't have some duckbill pliers like that, you could do this, possibly an even more fun term than squeezing the pith out of the cork. That's right, you would beat the pith out of the cork. I used to beat the pith out of the cork, but I like squeezing it better because I can't be exactly sure that I've hit everywhere as I go through with this, whereas with the pliers, I can just kind of keep an eye on it and overlap where I've squeezed. So, pliers, squeezing the pith is my preferred technique. Then, one last step. When the cork bends around and completes and touches itself there, we need to put a bevel. We need to put like a 45-degree angle in the very edge there. So I am just going to freehand that with the very sharp razor blade. And I'm just aiming for about a 45-degree angle. It's okay if it's not exactly 45. We'll end up with something like that. Let's see how right there it's at a 45-degree angle. All right, I just sliced just like that. Now we need to use contact cement. Melody puts a time recommendation for how long to let it dry in the book. I would recommend not going by that, but by going by the manufacturer's recommendations. I use something called barge contact cement that I get from J.L. Smith. And they recommend letting it dry for 10 minutes. So that's what I would say to do. So I'm going to paint a thin layer on both sides. So what I mean by that is I'm going to put a thin layer of contact cement on the tenon where the cork's going to go, and then I also need to put contact cement on the cork itself. Yeah, it's kind of weird, right? It's unlike any other adhesive you've ever seen, because usually when you're working with glue, you want to don't let it dry. For contact cement, you actually have to paint it on both sides, and then you do let it dry. And then after waiting the recommended amount of time, again, 10 minutes for barge contact cement from J.L. Smith, then it's okay to put it together. So I'm doing about the thinnest layer possible while also making sure I paint the entire channel. Don't want any spots with no glue because the cork's not going to stick to it. If the recork is done well, it shouldn't come off anytime soon. It should last years. All right, so you can see the kind of sheen there in the channel where I've put the contact cement. I got a little bit on the shoulders, like the edges there. No big deal. That'll scrape off quite easily once everything's dry. And then remember, we got to do both sides, right? So we need to do the cork as well. And on the cork, remember that 45-degree bevel that we cut? You are going to put a little bit of cork, or sorry, a little bit of contact cement right on the bevel. All right, so I've put the cement on the bevel, and then you want to flip the whole thing over and do the underside. And then remember, it's not like any other adhesive. You need to let everything dry. So we need to let this sit for 10 minutes, then we can put everything together. And I'll make a separate video to show you how to do that.